All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are tackling a question that trips up even the most seasoned academics. What is the real difference between a theoretical framework and a conceptual framework? It's a core part of doing research, but man, it is surrounded by a ton of confusion. So let's just dive right in. At first glance, right, these two terms seem, well, totally interchangeable. I mean, they both give your research structure, they're both kind of like a blueprint for your study. But are they just two different names for the same thing? Or is there a really crucial distinction that we're all missing? And this is where it gets really fun. Because when you start digging into the academic literature, you'd expect to find one clean, simple answer. But you don't. Instead, you find this genuine, full-blown debate. There is a surprising lack of consensus, which creates a real academic mystery. Okay, so to solve this mystery, we've got to start at the beginning. We need to get the fundamental building blocks of knowledge straight. Let's make sure we're all speaking the same language before we try to tackle the big question. A really great way to picture this comes from the researcher M. Sinclair. Just imagine a pyramid. Down at the very bottom, you've got your specific, concrete ideas. And as you climb up that pyramid, things get more and more general, more abstract, until you hit those big universal laws at the very peak. Researchers use a whole hierarchy of terms to make that climb. So, right at the base of our pyramid, we have concepts. Honestly, the best way to think of these is as the individual Lego bricks of research. There are these single abstract ideas like motivation or gamification. They are the basic vocabulary we have to work with. Okay, moving one level up. A construct is what you start to build with those Lego bricks. It's not just a single idea anymore. It's a combination of a few concepts and, crucially, the relationships between them. Think about emotional intelligence. That's not just one thing, right? It's a construct built from concepts like self-awareness, empathy, and social skills, all linked together. And then we get to the top of our little building block section, the theory. A theory is like the finished model. It's the complete instruction manual that uses all those concepts and constructs to explain why something happens or to predict how it's going to happen. So a theory like behaviorism, for example, uses its own concepts and constructs to explain the whole phenomenon of learning. All right, now that we have our building blocks down, concept, construct, and theory, we are ready. We can finally dive into the heart of all this confusion, the great frameworks debate. Now, get this. When Dr. Philip Adu actually went and analyzed all the research, he found that the academic community is split into at least five different camps on what these frameworks are and how you're supposed to use them. 5? It's kind of wild. And this table basically lays out the whole argument. You've got some scholars way over on one side arguing that the frameworks are totally different, both in what they contain and what they do. And then you've got people on the complete opposite end saying, nope, no difference at all. The terms are interchangeable. And with everyone else somewhere in the middle, well, it's no wonder we're all so confused. So with all that disagreement, how are we supposed to find a practical, clear path forward for our own research? Is there any simple way to just cut through all this noise? Thankfully, the answer is yes. Dr. Adu offers this wonderfully simple and just practical distinction. He basically says, look, if your study is built on an existing, established theory, call it a theoretical framework. But if you're building your own framework from a mix of different concepts, call it a conceptual framework. It's simple, it's clean, and it's incredibly effective. But this brings up an even bigger question, doesn't it? Before we even think about building one, why is having a framework, this whole blueprint idea, so critical in the first place? What's the point? And this is so important to get. A framework isn't just some formal academic box you have to check. It's like the Swiss Army knife for your entire study. It connects your work to the bigger conversation that's already happening. It helps you spot the gaps in the research, and it acts as a guide for your entire method. It really is the backbone of any solid research project. So let's move on to the final step and see how this all comes together. How do you actually go about constructing one of these powerful blueprints for your own work? Let's get practical. It really boils down to this super clear 4-step process. First, You decide what you need your framework to do. Then you select the right building blocks, either a whole theory or a set of concepts. Next, you draft the narrative that connects it all. And finally, you visualize it. You draw it out to make it crystal clear. It turns a really complex idea into an actionable plan. Now, that third step, the drafting part, that is absolutely critical. This is where you get to tell the story of your research. You're not just listing off definitions here. You're building a strong, logical bridge from the existing body of knowledge to the new territory your study is about to explore. And using Dr. Adu's distinction really clarifies the practical difference here. You can see how a theoretical framework is just perfect for testing an existing theory. That classic deductive approach you often see in quantitative studies. A conceptual framework, on the other hand, is much better for building a new understanding from the ground up, which is perfect for that exploratory inductive work you see in qualitative studies. So after all of this, where do we land? Well, while using the right term is definitely important for being clear, the real power of a framework isn't in what you call it, it's in what it does. Its real job is to sharpen our thinking, justify our methods, and guide us toward a meaningful discovery. Maybe the best framework isn't about getting the name right, but about the one that helps us ask much, much better questions.